The marketplace was loud and full of strange colors and sounds. Alien voices shouted. Machines buzzed. Metal feet clanked against the ground. People from many planets moved in every direction. Some were buying, some were selling, some were just watching. With cold eyes in the middle of all this, inside a cage made of rusty metal, sat a small girl with silver eyes. Her skin was soft and pale with a faint glow like the moon. She did not speak, she did not cry, she only looked around with tired eyes as if she had already seen too much. Two alien traders stood in front of her cage. Their green skin was rough, their mouths full of sharp yellow teeth. They laughed loudly while pointing at the girl. One of them said she was useless, could not even talk properly, too weak to work, too small to fight. They said she was not even worth a single credit. But then a new voice came from the shadows. Quiet, low, humani will take her, the man said. The aliens turned and saw him. He was tall with a black coat and a rough face. His eyes were dark but calm. His name was Captain Reeve, a human pilot who had seen many wars and lost many things. Aliens laughed again. Take her if you want. She's no good to us. Give us something old. Give us something rotten. We just want to get rid of her. Reeve reached into his bag and pulled out a crate. Inside were rotten fruits, soft and smelly, some half-eaten by space rats. He placed the crate on the table. The aliens smiled with greed. Deal, they said. The cage opened. Girl did not move. Reeve walked forward slowly. He knelt beside the cage and looked into her silver eyes. She looked back without fear. Only silence. He offered his hand. She did not take it. She stood up on her own bare feet, stepping gently on the cold floor. Then she walked out of the cage, past the traders, past the fruit, and stood beside the man who had chosen her. People in the market turned to look. Some whispered, some stared. An old alien woman selling metal parts shook her head. She said to no one, that girl is marked. Someone will come looking for her. Reeve heard it, but said nothing. He and the girl walked through the crowd. The people moved aside, some out of fear, some out of curiosity. They reached the edge of the market where a small ship waited, not shiny, not new, but strong and quiet. The name painted on the side was the Lantern. As they reached the ramp, the girl stopped. She turned around. Her silver eyes looked at the market one last time. She saw the cage now empty, the traders counting their fruit, the lights above flickering softly. Then she looked up at Reeve. Her hand reached out, touched his hand, and in that moment, something changed. Her eyes glowed brighter, not from fear, but from something else. Hope. Reeve saw it. He felt it. He said nothing. They stepped onto the ship. The door closed behind them. Far away in the shadows of the upper walkway, a figure watched them leave, a tall man in dark armor, with red eyes and a metal mask. He spoke into a small device on his wrist. Target has been taken. Begin tracking. Do not lose her. The figure turned and disappeared into the shadows. Back inside the Lantern, the crew looked at the girl with wide eyes. One of them whispered, "What is she?" Reeve said only this: "She is ours now, and we protect our own." The girl sat quietly in a corner, watching, listening, but deep inside her mind, something was waking up. Something powerful, something ancient, something not even she could understand yet. And far away on another planet, a light turned red. A machine began to move, and a name appeared on the screen. Subject: Kayaya. Status: located. The Lantern moved through space like a quiet ghost. No sound, no light. Only stars outside the window and the low hum of the engines deep inside the ship. Kaya sat near the back wall of the main cabin, small and still, her silver eyes watching everything. She held a soft blanket, now old and faded but warm. Captain Reeve had given it to her without a word. The crew walked past her again and again, each time with careful eyes, each step slower than the last. They did not understand what she was, and they did not trust her. A young woman named Tess finally sat across from her. Tess had oil on her hands and tools on her belt. She was the ship's engineer, and she was curious. "Hello," said Tess in a soft voice. Kaya did not answer. She looked down at the blanket, then at Tess, then back to her hands. Tess tilted her head and smiled. She pointed at herself. "Tess, then pointed at Kaya with a question in her eyes. Kaya blinked. Then she whispered something, a single word. Kaitis nodded slowly and stood up. She walked away with a thoughtful look. She did not know why the girl made her feel so strange. Like sunlight in the middle of darkness, Captain Reeve sat in the control room with a black mug in his hand. He stared at the empty stars in front of him. His mind was not quiet. It was full of old memories. A voice from the past, laughter, a little girl running across a green field, a daughter lost in the war. He closed his eyes. He tried to forget, but Kaya's face kept pulling the memory back. Suddenly an alarm beeped, not loud, but enough. Reeve pressed a button. A small screen lit up. Incoming ship. No ID, no signal. Moving fast. He stood quickly and called for the crew. Tess ran in with her hands still covered in grease. Jocks. The pilot jumped into his seat and checked the radar. It's following us, Jack said. Fast too. Fast. Reeve's eyes narrowed. Shields up, engines full power. Get ready to jump. They moved quickly, everyone to their places. The ship groaned as it turned, but the strange ship was already too close. A voice crackled through the radio. Give us the girl, or we take her by force. No name, no face, just a cold machine voice. Tess looked at Reeve with fear. Reeve did not move. He pressed the comms and spoke with steel in his voice. She stays with us. The enemy ship fired a warning shot. The lantern shook. Sparks flew from the ceiling. Kaya stood up slowly from her corner. She walked to the cockpit, her bare feet silent on the floor. Reeve turned. You should stay back. Kaya did not listen. She walked past him, her eyes fixed on the control screen. She touched the panel. The lights blinked, the engines whined. Then without warning, the stars outside stretched. The ship jumped faster than it had ever jumped before. Jax shouted in shock. That should not be possible. We don't have the tech, we don't have the fuel, we don't have the codes. But the ship kept moving farther, faster. Silent. Kaya stepped back and sat down again, her breathing calm, her face without fear. Reeve stared at her. He did not speak, but his heart beat louder than before. Later that night, when the ship was quiet again, Reeve found Kaya drawing out a metal panel with her finger symbols strange and glowing. Lines that moved like light. What are you doing? He asked. Kaya looked at him, then looked back at the marks. It's home, she said. But she did not explain. Tess came in holding a scanner. She had checked the ship's systems. Something was changing. Something. Kaya had touched. The engines are stronger now. Tess whispered faster, like something inside them woke up. Reeve nodded. He looked at Kaya again. You're not just a child, are you? He asked. Kaya looked at him, then said slowly, I was made, but I ran. I don't want to hurt again. Her voice shook like wind in a broken window. Reeve knelt beside her. He placed a hand on her shoulder. You're safe here, he said. We protect our own, but far away. The ship that chased them still floated in space, its hull broken, its power drained inside. A tall figure with a metal mask stared at a glowing screen. Her energy is waking, he said. Then he smiled. A cold smile with no kindness. Track them. Find them. She belongs to us. And in the black sky, a dozen new ships began to move silent. Fast hunting, but inside the lantern Kaya slept for the first time without fear, wrapped in the old blanket, surrounded by stars and something new. Something warm. Family. The lantern floated near a quiet moon where the stars seemed to sleep and the air outside was cold, like forgotten time. Inside the ship the crew moved slower, now watching Kaya with careful eyes and silent questions. She was not like them. She was not like anyone. Kaya sat near the engine room with her hands pressed against the wall. Her fingers moved in soft patterns like she was listening to something deeper than sound. The metal under her hands began to glow. Not bright, just enough to feel alive. Tess watched from the doorway with a tool in her hand and worry in her chest. She had seen Kaya change the ship's systems without wires or code. She had seen broken engines heal themselves. She had seen lights respond to her, touch like the ship knew her better than it knew them. Captain Reeve stood at the bridge with Jax beside him. Both looked at a new signal blinking on the screen. It was not a message, it was a warning, a bounty. Kaya's image, her silver eyes cold and still. And below it the number 100,000 credits, alive only, they want her alive, Reeve said, but not safe. Jax cursed under his breath and turned away. We should leave her at the next station. Too much heat, too much danger. Reeve said nothing. He looked at the screen again, at the image of the girl who now slept in the engine room like a child with no home. Later that night, Kaya woke from sleep with her heart pounding and her hands shaking. She had seen fire in her dream. Voices screaming, machines pulling at her skin, and a name, Zorath. She's whispered it to herself again and again. Zorath, Zorath, until her breath slowed and her hands stopped shaking. Tess came in holding warm tea in a cracked cup. She sat beside Kaya without speaking. Just silence and the sound of distant stars. I saw him. Kaya said he made me, he wanted to use me. He called me a weapon. Tess looked at her with wide eyes and held her hand. You are not a weapon. You are more. Kaya smiled for the first time. It was small but real. Suddenly, the lights flickered, the ship shook, an alarm screamed from the bridge. Tess and Kaya ran to the front where Reeve was already shouting commands. Another ship had arrived. Not just one, 3, black and sharp like knives in space. They fired without warning. Lasers tore across the shields, panels exploded. Sparks rained like angry stars. Jax yelled for power. Tess ran to fix the shields. Reeve pulled the ship into a steep divot. Kaya stood still, her eyes glowing brighter than before. She stepped forward. She placed both hands on the console and closed her eyes. The ship responded. The engines burned with blue fire. The shields reformed. The controls moved with strange precision, like they were no longer metal but part of something alive. Jax stared in shock. How is she doing that? The ship should not fly like this. Reeve watched in silence, his hand still on the throttle, but the ship no longer needed him. Kaya opened her eyes. They were filled with light, not fear, not pain, only power. She whispered something in a voice not fully human, and the enemy ships stopped moving, frozen in space like statues, their lights dim, their weapons cold. Reeve turned to Kaya. What did you do? I spoke to them, she said. To their systems, to the code they forgot. They had. You can do that, Reeve asked. Kaya looked down. I could always do it. I just never wanted to again. The crew stood in silence as the stars returned to stillness. Tess walked to Kaya and hugged her tight without words. Jax shook his head and laughed. We are flying with a miracle or a monster. Reeve looked at Kaya. She's a child. She is lost, but she is not a monster. Kaya looked up at him, tears in her glowing eyes. Do you believe that? She asked. I do, he said. And we will not give you up. But deep in the far systems, Zorath sat on his throne of metal and bone. He watched the events through cold machines and cruel eyes. She is awake, he said. She remembers good. He turned to his soldiers. Send the hunters, bring her back alive or broken. And across the galaxy ships began to move, not slow, not careful, but like wolves with blood in their mouths. Back on the lantern, Kaya sat in her quiet corner again. The crew patched the walls, repaired the lights, but nothing felt the same. She had touched the ship, she had touched something deeper, and now everything was changing inside. Her heart, a question burned. What am I really, and why did they make me at all? Reeve stood at the window, watching the stars, his hand resting near his sidearm, his mind no longer on trade or credits or the war behind him. He was thinking only of the girl, the silver eyes, the glowing hands, and the silent promise. She is not alone anymore. The lantern drifted near a dying star, where fire moved like slow rivers and space burned with red light. Kaya stood in the viewing room with her hands pressed to the glass, her silver eyes reflecting the flames outside. She did not blink, she did not speak. She was listening to something beyond sound. Captain Reeve watched from the hallway, his arms crossed, his thoughts heavy like stones in water. He had questions. Too many, and now it was time to ask. He stepped into the room and stood beside her, his voice calm and low. Where did you come from? He asked. Kaya turned slowly, her face soft and quiet. I do not know the place, she said, but I remember the pain. Reeve nodded. Once and waited. They put wires in my skin, she said. They made me sleep in light. They spoke in numbers. They gave me words I did not want, and they told me you are not a child, you are a tool. You are for war, Reeve felt the words cut through him like old wounds opening again. He had seen many weapons, many machines, but none had cried like a child in the dark. Why you, he asked. Why make? Yaukaya closed her eyes and stepped back. They took something from Earth long ago, she said, a seed, a memory, a piece of human soul. They wanted to mix it with code, with ancient alien tech, to build something new. Something that could feel and think, but still obeyed. Did it work? Reeve asked. Kaya opened her eyes and looked at him with sadness. It worked until I ran. She walked past him toward the engine room where Tess was working under a broken panel, her hands covered in dust and wires. Kaya knelt beside her and placed a hand on the metal. It pulsed once, then healed. Tess sat up and smiled. You are like a living circuit, she said. You speak to Machineskaya nodded. But the machines speak back too. Tess frowned. Do they hurt? Yaukaya paused before answering. Sometimes. When they remember the past. Reeve entered the room holding an old data drive. He placed it on the table and looked at Kyo. Found this in the last attack, he said. The enemy ship left it behind. It holds files and one video. Kaya walked over and touched the drive. A screen lit up. A cold white room appeared. In the center was a small child floating in a tank. Her eyes were closed. Her skin glowed faintly. Reeve leaned closer. Is that Yaukaya nodded. Once a voice filled the room. Zareth, clear and sharp like a knife through glass. Subject: Kaya, ready for Phase 3 emotional suppression, complete memory lock engaged. Begin weapon training tomorrow. The screen faded to black. Tess covered her mouth with one hand, her eyes wide with horror. They trained you like a weapon, she whispered. Kaya stepped back from the screen. I broke the lock, she said. I ran, but the memories come back in pieces, like smoke, like broken glass. Reeve moved closer and placed a hand on her shoulder. You are not their tool, he said. You are not what they wanted. Kaya looked up at him, her voice trembling. Then what am I? Reeve pointed at the stars outside. You are a choice, and right now you choose to be more than they made. Suddenly the ship shook. The alarm screamed. Jox's voice came through the com. We are being scanned. No weapons yet, but it is watching us. Reeve ran to the bridge. With Kaya and Tess close behind. On the screen was a single black ship. No lights, no markings, but it felt like a shadow had come alive. Reeve opened the com. This is Captain Reeve of the Lantern. We are peaceful. Identify yourself. Silence followed. Then a voice answered, slow, deep, unfeeling. You have something that belongs to Zoreth. Return the subject, or be erased. Kaya stepped forward, her eyes glowing brighter. Tell him I am not his. The voice did not answer. The black ship vanished in a blink like smoke. In wind. Reeve looked at Kaya. Is watching you. He is waiting. Kaya nodded, then let him wait. Later that night, Kaya sat alone in her small room, drawing symbols on the wall with light from her fingers. They moved and changed like living letters, not human, not alien, something new. Tess entered quietly and sat on the floor beside her. What are you writing? She asked. Kaya answered without looking up. I am writing what I want to be. And what is that? Tess asked. Kaya smiled, free, far across the stars, deep inside a fortress of black stone and burning wires. Zoreth stared at a wall covered in screens. He watched Kaya, every move, every word. He leaned forward with a cruel smile. She remembers. Good, now let her see the truth. He raised one hand and pressed a button. Dozens of ships powered up. Engines screamed. Hunters prepared. Bring her home, he whispered, or burn the stars. Trying, and the darkness moved back on the lantern. Kaya sat still, but inside her a fire had started, not of war, not of fear, but of something older. The need to be free, the will to be more, the spark of something human. Stars were quiet, but the silence was not peace. It was the deep breath before a scream. The lantern moved through empty space, slow and steady, but every light on the ship felt like a target. Captain Reeve stood at the window, watching nothing and everything. His fingers tapped against his belt, not from fear, but from knowing fear was coming. Kaya sat in the corner of the engine room with her knees pulled to her chest, her silver eyes open wide, but not blinking. She was listening again to sounds no one else could hear. The ship was whispering to her through metal and code, through memory and breath. It told her that danger was near, closer than the crew believed. Tess walked in carrying a small cup of tea with shaky hands. She placed it beside Kaya and sat on the floor without a word. They stayed like that for a while, still quiet together. Then the ship lights blinked once, then again, then red. The alarm screamed. Jock shouted from the bridge, inbound ships, 5 of them. Fast, no warning. No IG. Reeve rushed to the controls. Tess grabbed her tool belt. Kaya stood up and walked to the center of the shipjacks, pulled the ship hard to the right through a field of frozen rocks spinning like knives. Laser fire cut through the space behind them. Close, too close. Tess shouted that shields were holding, but only barely. The ship groaned under the pressure like it was alive and in pain. Kaya placed both hands on the floor. Her eyes turned white, no pupil, no glow, just light. The ship responded. Engines burned brighter. The rocks moved aside. The hull shifted shape like it remembered how to survive. But the hunters were not normal ships. They were shaped like blades, sharp and silent, and they moved like they knew every escape route before the lantern could think of one. Ship latched onto the side of the lantern, metal arms locked into place. The hull screamed as it tore. Boarding was coming. Reeve ran down the hall. With his blaster drawn, Tess followed with a wrench in one hand and fear in her chest. Kaya stood in front of the main door, her hands glowing now, not with fear, but with control. Metal hissed, the door bent inward, then silence, then crash. A figure stepped through. Tall black armor, red visor, no voice, just breath like a machine dying slowly. It raised a weapon aimed at Kiesh, raised her hand. No words, no screams, just will. The weapon cracked, fell in pieces. The figure rushed forward. Reeve fired. Tess swung her wrench, but Kaya moved faster. She placed one hand on the floor, one on the wall, and everything around her bent like light in water. The hunter stopped, frozen, caught in a web of invisible force. Its body cracked, its armor opened, and inside was not flesh but code, a machine in disguise. Reeve pulled off its mask. No face, only wires. Tess gasped. "They are not just chasing you. They are made for you." Kaya nodded. "They are like me but empty. More ships outside, more lights, more signals." Jax called through the speaker, "We cannot outrun this. They are everywhere." Akia looked at Reeve. "We must go where they cannot follow." "And where is that?" he asked. She closed her eyes. "To the place where I was born." Reeve stared at her. "That place could be a trip." Kaya nodded. "Then let us spring it first." He smiled without joy. "You sound like a soldier." Kaya looked at him. "I sound like someone who is done running." Tess touched her shoulder. "Then let us help you fight." The lantern turned sharply. Engines screamed louder than before. The stars shifted, and a new path opened, a hidden path known only to Kia. Behind them, the hunters tried to follow, but the path closed like a wound, healing fast. Inside the lantern, the crew sat together in silence. Jax breathing hard, Tess checking systems, Reeve holding his arm where fire had touched him. Kaya in the center of it all, calm, bright, awake. She reached into the ship's systems, past wires, past code, into memory. She showed them a place, a planet covered in storms, a black tower in the center, and deep below, a room of light. The place she was made. The place they called the core. "That is where we must go," she said. "That is where the truth sleeps." Reeve nodded. "Then that is where we go." Far behind them, in the silence of space, one hunter ship remained, damaged but not destroyed. Its signal weak but alive inside it. A message played over and over. "She is going home. She is going home. She is going home." And across the stars, Zorath listened with a smile like rusted metal. "Let her come," he whispered. "Let her remember who she really is. And when she does, let her kneel." But inside the lantern, Kaya did not feel fear anymore. She felt fire. She felt strength. She felt hands beside her, not pushing her, not using her, but holding her up. She was not hunted now. She was becoming the storm. The stars faded behind them as the lantern broke through the edge of known space where no map reached and no signals worked, and the sky turned darker. Then black. Kaya stood at the front of the ship, her silver eyes wide, her fingers tracing invisible lines in the air, as if she could see what no one else could see. The others stood back, watching her, letting her guide the way, for this was not space. That answered to charts or engines. This was memory. This was old code buried in the bones of time ahead. Of them a planet appeared cold and broken with storms. Swirling around it like hands pulling at the sky, lightning cracked in silent flashes and the clouds opened to reveal a great black tower in the middle of a silver desert. Beneath that tower, deep underground, was the core, the place where Kaya was born, the place where the truth had been hidden. Reeve gripped the controls as the ship shook, the atmosphere fighting them like a beast in pain. Tess held the stabilizers steady while Jocks read out failing systems with a voice that tried to hide his fear. But Kaya remained still, her hands glowing, her mind focused on something only she could feel. The lantern landed hard on a stone platform, cracked by age and heat. Its engines powered down slowly like a tired heart. Silence followed. Kaya stepped out first, her feet touching the ground with strange familiarity. The desert winds moved around her but did not touch her. The sand seemed to remember her. Reeve followed, his weapon ready, Tess beside him holding a scanner. Jack stayed back to guard the ship. They walked to the tower, its walls black and smooth, no doors, no windows, only a flat surface. Kaya raised her hand and the wall opened with a sigh, like something waking from a long dream inside. The air was cold and heavy, the floor glowing with dim light that responded to her steps. Symbols appeared on the walls, old letters, not human, not alien, something between, something forgotten. The hallway led them down deeper. With every step the walls hummed louder, as if they were speaking without words. At the bottom, they reached a large round chamber. In the center floated a sphere of light and data spinning slowly, with millions of lines moving across its surface. This was the core, alive, watching, waiting. Kaya stepped forward and the sphere stopped spinning. The lines froze, the lights turned red, then white, then clear. A voice filled the room, her voice, but not her voice. Subject: Kaya, welcome home. You have returned to your source. Would you like to begin again? Reeve looked at her but said nothing. Kaya stood tall, her voice firm. No, I did not come to begin. I came to end what you started. Sphere pulsed once, then spoke again. You were made to obey. You were made to carry fire into the stars. You were made for Zoroth. Kaya shook her head. I was made. But I am not yours. I choose now, not youth. Sphere brightened and suddenly images filled the air. Kaya in a glass tank. Kaya screaming as wires entered her spine. Kaya learning to control machines with her thoughts. Kaya destroying a test chamber with a single scream. Tess stepped back, her hand over her mouth. Reeve clenched his fists but did not move. Kaya reached forward and touched the sphere. The lights shifted. The images stopped. New ones appeared. Kaya escaping, running, hiding. The day she found the lantern. The day Reeve gave her a blanket instead of a cage. The core began to shake. The lights flickered. You have changed, it said. You have rewritten the code. This is not Aloid. Kaya smiled, then stopped me, and with both hands she pulled the light into her body. The sphere cracked, the symbols on the walls shattered, the hum became a scream. But Kaya stood strong, her eyes shining like stars, her skin glowing with power, not from anger, not from pain, but from choice. Tess shouted for her to stop. Reeve reached out to grab her, but Kaya held her ground. She spoke one word: free, and the chamber exploded with white light, then silence. When the light faded, Kaya stood in the center of the room, the sphere gone, the walls dim, the air quiet. She turned to Reeve and Tess, her voice soft but steady. It is done. The core is dead. I am not what they made anymore. Reeve stepped forward and placed a hand on her shoulder. You are more than they ever dreamed. Tess smiled with tears on her face. You are real. You are human where it matters. But far above the surface in the cold sky, a fleet began to arrive. Zoroths. Ships, hundreds of them, blocking the stars. Inside the largest one, Zoroth stood before a screen showing the broken core and the glowing girl who had defied her creators. She is ready, he said. Now let us take back what belongs to us. His army moved with silence and speed back on the planet. Kaya looked up toward the black sky and felt them coming, not with fear, but with fire in her heart. They thought the core was her cage, but she had made it her torch, and now she would burn the darkness. The sky was no longer black. It was filled with ships shaped like blades and eyes and metal wings. that spread across the stars like a living storm. The air around the tower buzzed with pressure, as if the planet itself feared what had come. Kaya stood at the top of the broken structure, her silver eyes reflecting the enemy above her body, calm, her breath steady. Her heart not afraid. Captain Reeve stood behind her, his hand on his blaster, but his eyes fixed on her face, not the sky, not the fleet. Tess knelt by the control panel, her hands moving fast, her mind racing, trying to find any signal, any weapon, any shield that could protect them. Jax called from the ship, his voice loud through the comms. There are too many. We cannot run. We cannot hide. What do we do? Reeve looked at Kaya and asked nothing. He had seen what she could do. He had seen who she was becoming. This was no longer a child lost in a cage. This was someone who had chosen to stand. Kaya stepped forward and raised both hands into the sky. She did not shout. She did not scream. She only spoke in a voice strong and soft. I am not your weapon. I am not your tool. I am not yours. Above her, the ship stopped moving, as if caught in invisible ice. Zorath stood on the command deck of the lead warship, his face hidden behind a gold mask, his eyes two red fires that never blinked. Bring her to me, he said. I want her alive. But if she resists, take her piece by piece. The hunters launched from the ships, falling like dark stars, each one armed, each one programmed, each one ready to take back what they believed was theirs. Reeve drew his weapon. Tess grabbed a metal rod. They stood beside Kaya, not to protect her, but to show her she was not alone. The first wave landed with sound like thunder. The ground cracked, dust rose, lights flashed. Kaya walked forward and placed her hands on the broken stones. The planet answered, not with words, not with machines, but with memory. Lights rose from the earth. Old systems once forgotten, now waking towers. Lit up walls shifted, and a pulse of energy moved through the air like a heartbeat. The hunters fired beams of red light, filled the sky. Kaya lifted one hand. The beams bent away, curved, vanished. She did not destroy, she redirected. She turned violence into silence. One hunter reached her, raised a blade. Kaya caught it with her bare hand and whispered something only it could hear. It froze, then dropped to the ground. Its lights faded, its weapon fell apart like ash and windmore. Came dozens, hundreds. Kaya moved through them like wind through trees. She did not strike. She did not crush. She touched, she whispered, and they stopped. Not all, but enough. Tess watched with tears in her eyes. Jock shouted through the comms that backup systems had just doubled in strength. The ship was healing, the planet was healing. Something old was returning. Zorath growled. He slammed his fist into the console and shouted, end her now. He entered a pod and launched himself toward the surface. Kaya felt him coming. She turned to Reeve and spoke softly, stay here. This is for me. Reeve tried to speak, but could not find the words. Kaya walked into the open. The sky above split as Zorath landed in a crash of fire and metal. He rose tall, his armor gold, his body more machine than flesh, his voice full of command. You are mine. You were made for war. Come back. Neil. Kaya looked at him and said one word. Nazareth charged. Faster than light, stronger than steel. He struck, but Kaya caught his hand, her eyes brighter than any sun, her voice a wave of calm. I choose peace. I choose light. I choose worth. Zorath screamed. His systems shorted. His armor cracked. He swung again. Kaya placed her hand on his chest and closed her eyes. You were like me once, but you forgot who you were. I will not forget. A pulse of energy moved through him, not to kill, but to show himself as a child. He saw the labs, the pain, the lost years. He fell to his knees, not from defeat, but from memory. Kaya stepped back. Zorath removed his mask. There were tears in his eyes. He vanished in light. The sky cleared. The hunters stopped. The ships pulled away. Silence returned. Reeve walked forward and placed a hand on Kaya's shoulder. You ended it without work. Kaya turned to him, her face soft, her eyes full of light. They sold me for rotten fruit, but you saw me. You gave me a name. You gave me a choice. Reeve smiled. You gave us something too. Tess ran to them and laughed and cried all at once. The crew stepped from the ship. They gathered around Kaya, not as a weapon, not as a tool, but as someone worth everything. The stars above began to shine again, not cold, not distant, but warm. Kaya looked at them and whispered, I am not what they made, I am what I chose, and I choose to live. The galaxy watched, and for the first time it understood her worth.